Hi there, my name is Mary Catherine Villarico, and I wanted to tell you about my book and how I published within 30 days. Well, a little over 30 days, but basically a month. The name of my book is Life Preserver, and you can find it on Amazon now. But basically, I was laid off from my job last year. I was working in advertising, and that was a 40-hour-a-week thing, not including the commute. So as you can imagine, it completely burned me out. That's not a knock against the advertising industry at large, but just kind of corporate America. America as a whole is kind of soul-sucking. So anyway, since I had more time on my hands, I was able to get back into reading, which I had done. I renewed my library card and I basically just set off and started reading a lot more. And also I got into background acting. So over this time of background acting and reading a lot, one thing that I noticed was that I was really critical of the storytelling process. Whether I was on set or I would be reading a book, sometimes I would think to myself, oh, it would have been better if this person said that, or if this happened next in the storyline, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they shouldn't have included that. That didn't really push the plot forward in a meaningful way. So things like that. And, I had been keeping myself busy between background acting and also working in retail just to kind of make ends meet. But I started noticing even my retail opportunities were dwindling down even further, to the point where I would just have 4 days off in a row. And obviously the internet is such a wide and vast place, but there's only so many TikTok videos, and I felt like, yes, there was a lot of content out there for me to consume, whether it's books, movies, TV shows, just doom scrolling in general. But I think that it was mainly born out of the fact that, having been on set, observing the storytelling process from that perspective, as well as deep diving more into reading, and then just having a chunk of time, I thought to myself, I should try to write a book. This is one of those things that I'd always wanted to do since I was a young girl, but I think that, I didn't really have the wherewithal back then. I'd certainly written things for my English classes, but even at that age, reading back my own work, I was like, oh, this is so cringe. But basically, I felt like this time around, I was like, I'm much older now. I'm 39, so I had, 10 years of corporate America under my belt. So though writing a corporate email is not quite the same as creative writing, I would argue that creative writing is so much more fun, and I think that you can do things much better if you enjoy them. I think that when I started this process, never in my wildest dreams did I think that I was ever going to publish a book, let alone in a month. I think the month timeline just came about arbitrarily, mainly because I had been working in corporate America for the better part of a decade, longer than that. I was so used to setting timelines for myself that it just felt natural to set a timeline. Even if I didn't hit it, there wasn't going to be any kind of repercussion to not hitting the deadline. And that kind of ties into my next point about how I published, which was self-publishing. I mean, mainly I went with self-publishing because I didn't really have a choice. It's not like I had a book deal on the line and I turned it down. It wasn't like that. But I think it was really important to me to go to the self-publishing route, even if there was an opportunity to go the traditional publishing route, just because I wanted this story to be completely my own. Number one, I didn't want to be held to a timeline. I felt like putting unnecessary stress was gonna ruin my creative process. And then also, from what I understand about traditional publishing is, they kind of pick it apart a little bit. And another thing too is my whole approach to this process was that it was going to be like a budget publishing situation. Being that I was laid off, obviously I don't have money to throw around, so I couldn't afford to pay an editor. I couldn't afford to send out free copies, although I did send out one free copy to Chelsea Fagan. Shout out Chelsea, because she is an author and I, admire her work, and she deserved to have that. Also, she's an author of two very well known successful books. One is called A Perfect Vintage, and the other one is called The High Dive. Go check them out wherever books are sold. Anyway, yeah, I didn't have the money. So I was like, let's just do this self-publishing thing. And also, when I realized that all you needed to do was write the manuscript and essentially upload it, and there was no out-of-pocket costs, that really appealed to me. So that's how I decided on the way to publish it. So I think that what makes my process a little bit unique is that I just started writing it. I think that there's a term for this in the literary world. It's called gardening. I guess I sort of did that because I never wrote an outline. I just sort of went for it. Because that was also part of the process. I said to myself, just try it and see how it feels. Don't get hung up in the mechanics of how it's supposed to go. I almost wanted to have no bias about the process because sometimes when I dive into something and there's so much information and resources out there, it gets a little bit overwhelming to me, to the point of me not even attempting to do it. So I just started writing, and once the story started developing in my mind, I know this probably is going to sound cliche, but it just started flowing. I did set, sort of arbitrary goalposts, like, I'd like to write a chapter or two per day. But, I was also working. So even though there's a lot of downtime on set, it's not really the environment to sit down and like write down a story. That you get interrupted a lot. So it's good for reading a story, but not writing a story. And even though I was writing the story on Google Docs, so I was able to write it on my phone, I just preferred being at a computer. There were some like formatting issues that I ran into later down the line when it came time to publish, that it's still just not ideal. And I also just didn't want to be bringing my laptop everywhere. Yeah, so it just kind of flowed for me. And I think that the month deadline came about really towards the end, because when I was down to my last 2 chapters and it was the last week of August, I was like, okay, I would really like to finish this in a month, just because, I don't know, that just feels like a good, a nice round number, But I will say that I almost kind of rushed through the last 2 chapters and also my editing. So I had submitted it on, I think, the 30th of August, and then it still took time, like a few days of back and forth, which ironically is a process that I'm used to from advertising, except usually it's me going back and forth with the client. This time it was me going back with myself, where I was the agency and the client. So all full accountability on the errors that I had to clean up towards the end. But I just went for it, and it shocked even me. The thought of writing a book in general was extremely daunting, so let alone completing it in a month. So I don't know, I don't really have any advice. I just wanted to kind of outline my process, how I went through those motions. And as far as the story is concerned, essentially it takes place in Catalina. Natasha and her brother are out on their parents' boat, just having a regular old summer, and then he goes missing. So it kind of takes you through that process of her trying to find him, what kinds of obstacles and internal conflicts that she encounters along the way, and just a little bit of the backstory of, how he disappeared. It's hard to say that without giving the story away. I think that made it a little bit unique, that I didn't seek out resources in the traditional sense of how people, Google how to write a novel. I didn't research that until the book was published, which I know it sounds weird. But it was also very validating that after watching all the how to do stuff for novels, that I had already done those things. I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that too. So anyway, it all worked out. And then last, here's where I just kind of put my hopes and dreams into the universe. When I wrote this book, it sounds insane, but I think you have to be a little bit delulu to be successful, or at least that's the lie that I'm telling myself. When I wrote it with the mindset of it potentially being turned into a screenplay, potentially a series. So whether it's a movie series or a television series, or shout out Netflix, you guys have been denying my application for years. It would be so meta to have my novel adapted into a series on your platform. Would love that for me. Also, I will still take a job there if you'll have me. So yeah, that's kind of my hope for the future. And being that I'm a background actor, it would be also amazing to cast myself. Not as a background actor, obviously, I would love to do more than that. No shade. I actually love background acting because you just kind of show up and eat snacks and walk across the camera every once in a while. So that's it. That's how I published my debut novel in a month. Thanks for watching. Bye.